Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. And today we're going to talk about math and TimeSplitters Future Perfect, an absolutely amazing game that was well ahead of its time. Yeah, I did. But seriously, it's an incredible game. Very innovative, very fun, very colorful, and just oof, it's an absolute blast. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the gameplay. We're going to talk about the story a little bit. We're going to talk about the different modes, and we're going to talk about the math involved and all of those things, and the math involved on a larger, more meta level. A larger, more meta level. Why was that difficult to say? But I don't know. But we're gonna keep it moving. So I'm gonna keep things largely spoiler free for a couple reasons. I think a lot of the twists and turns that come with the game are better experienced playing the game. And to be perfectly honest, I'm more excited to talk about the gameplay than the story, even though I very much enjoy the story. Because the story is it's wild. It's ridiculous. It's over the top. Time travel is a thing. Everything gets really wild throughout that process, and I think it's best to just experience that on your own. And honestly, because of all the time travel and insanity, it is tough to do it justice when you're giving a summary of it. Um, because time travel. Yeah. So that being said, let's dig in. So, with Time Splitters, it is a series that focuses on first person shooter gameplay. And with Time Splitters Future Perfect, it has so much going on. There's never really any of the three Time Splitters games that, is lacking in content as far as I'm concerned. But with Time Splitters Future Perfect, it has so much going on. And if we want to focus in on the arcade mode first, I have a lot to say about it. But I will say that just that there's so much that it has going on in terms of the modes, right? Because you have the arcade mode, and with the arcade mode, you have things like death match and team death match, capture flag, things like that. And there's math and all that, and we'll get to it. With the focus being on the death match. Um, but they also have a story mode. And with that story mode, you can play it and play it as a single player experience, but you can also play it as a co op experience. And there's things that come with all of that, right? There's a lot of math and all that, a lot of fun and all that. And it also has challenge modes. They have leagues to consider. They have local gameplay when you're talking about the multiplayer, but they also have online. Like that was a thing. Time Splitters Future Perfect came out in 2005, and though it was expensive to get things set up so you can play online, it was an option. And before we get too far into this, 2005 was a crazy year in gaming, like a good one. Because for me, you had games like Time Splitters, like Future Perfect coming out. You had Devil May Cry 3, you had Prince of Persia, The Two Thrones, and even though Metal Gear Solid 3 came out in 2004, it came out in late 2004. Right? It was still kicking and strong in 2005, and I definitely played it both of those years. It was an incredible game. So, and there's a lot of other games that came out in that year that rocked, and I just realized that like all the games that I mentioned were like third entries into their series. Although with Metal Gear Solid 3, it was a third entry into the Metal Gear Solid series. But if you look at the Metal Gear series as a whole, it was the fifth main entry into the franchise. But that being said, all the games I mentioned were sequels, and they all killed it, and that's impressive. But back to Time Splitters Future Perfect. If we focus in on the arcade, just designing it, how you want your experience to go has a lot of math in it. Because see, here's the thing, right? As you go throughout arcade mode and you go throughout challenge mode, you unlock more characters, you unlock more weapons, and if you have your save file 20 years almost after it came out, you have unlocked pretty much everything. So it gives you so many options, and so you can pick a level, right? And with that level, you might be thinking about certain weapons working better with certain levels, but we'll get to that. So you have a certain number of levels to choose from. and they have a decent option, so it gives you some variety in there. So there's math involved in that many levels. There's math involved in designing each level and how they function, how they flow, how you move throughout the level. There's so much math there. And then when you get to pick more details, you can pick how long these matches are going to last. Right? There's math in that, right? Because you could pick something like 5 minutes. You can pick 10, 15, a half hour, an hour, stuff like that. I usually go with 15 because it gives you a good opportunity to explore the level and fight your foes and all that good stuff. And to continue the conversation, though, there's also a lot of math in the weapons you can bring into the match. Because see, here's the thing. With the weapons, right? They all have different things that work for them. You have assault rifles, one of which has a rocket attachment. You could also dual wield those assault rifles. You have submachine guns. You have proximity mines, remote mines. You have crazy things like the mag charger, which pretty much shoots lasers and can go through walls. It's a little slower, but the whole going through walls helps. You have different grenades. You have regular grenades, plasma grenades that stick. You have a lot going on. You have your sci-fi guns, in which case they shoot lasers. You can dual wield them as well, and you can switch the mode that so that you can have the beam reflect off of different surfaces, and you can just have all these crazy things going on. And if you're really good at the geometry with it, you can use that to your advantage. And here's the thing: with each of the weapons I mentioned, there's a lot of math involved, because there's math involved in designing those weapons and programming them in. There's math involved when you're thinking about the physics of those weapons and the physics involved in the game. There's math in how much ammo you can carry for each weapon. There's math in how each of these weapons function, how they flow, how you can use them to your advantage, how you might use them in different levels. There's math in all of it, and it's amazing. And here's the thing: there's math in just not only the strategy involved in picking those weapons for each level, but the amount that you can carry in. So here's the thing: with each of the weapon layouts, you have up to 6 weapons. Now, you do have recommended weapons for each stage, sure. And you have assorted weapons in general, sure. But you also have up to 5 customizable weapon layouts that you can change at your discretion. And with those, you can really have fun with it. You can choose your own themes. You can make your own concoctions. And so there's a lot of strategy in what you might want to do on any custom layout, right? Because you have to think that, oh, I have up to 6 slots. And you want to have weapons that might give you long range capability, weapons that may give you short range capability, weapons that are fast but maybe don't do a lot of damage, weapons that do a lot of damage but maybe slow, or if they're like the minigun, they're fast, they do a lot of damage, but they overheat. So there's a caveat for a lot of these weapons. So you want to strategize. But the idea is you're thinking about how much damage you're doing. You're thinking about how fast this weapon is. There's math and all that. And you might even start to think about the physics involved in all those things like the sci-fi guns that I mentioned before. Because like if you got a good handle on the physics and how fast they're moving and the geometry, you can start concocting some pretty cool plans. Then there's things to consider in addition to that, right? Like, because you might be thinking about your heavy arms and stuff like that, but you might also think like, oh, well, I definitely want to do some grenades that I might pick up, and the same for the mines. And the thing about the mines is they're a main weapon, so that's something to consider. But the grenades, they're an alternate weapon, so you can still be wielding your regular weapons, but also have grenades. So I think it's personally good to have those, but the limit to have them is 5. But you could always pick up more if you find it. And so there's a lot of math in all of that, but it's not just picking the weapons, right? Each level has respawn points, or sorry, like respawning points where you'll respawn at. And so as you're going through each level, you want to get a handle on that, and it's something to consider. But that's not the only thing when you're picking what to do with your level. So after you pick your weapons and everything, or as you're picking your weapons, you can if you're playing by yourself or with a friend, you can also pick out the bots that will be with you. You can pick up to 10 bots. You can have them be different characters that you unlock during the game. You can make them all like one type of character. And that's where I think things get really crazy because I like to have fun with that. Like, and they have wild characters. They have like some of the characters that you encounter in the story, like different human characters. They have like some characters from previous games, and they have more wonky, wild characters. Like you can fight a team of gingerbread men if you should so choose. You can fight snowmen, which, by the way, if you start with a flamethrower, let the chaos ensue. You can fight dinosaurs. Specifically, they look like mini T Rexes. You can fight just so much. You can fight characters that have like globes on their heads that like have fishes or fish going around in them. You can fight ducks, humanoid ducks. You can fight zombies. You can fight the TimeSplitters themselves, the titular enemies of the game. They're these bizarre, horrifying monster creatures. So you can have a lot of range, and you can do any assortment of those characters. And like I said before, like each level might get you thinking about things differently because like there's like a level that takes place in Siberia. Where it is awesome for sniping, so you might want to like equip a sniper rifle. But then there's like or more contained levels like the disco level or the subway level. So you might want to get a lot of close range weapons and maybe throw in a long range one if you can get to a decent spot. But really, I think things like a shotgun would work really decently, or grenades, or things like that. And so it's fun to think about all these different combinations. And then when you actually get into the deathmatch, let's say it's like you versus 10 of your opponents, and they're gunning for you, but they're also gunning for each other. You can make it absolutely insane. And you have to think about the physics of the level going upstairs. If you ever need to crouch, you can think about that. You have to consider how much ammo each weapon you have is carrying, and there's math in all of this. There's math in the reload too, because it's like it takes time, and so you want to consider that. And if you can take cover, you want to consider reload speeds and things like that. So there's a lot of math going on, and you're doing so much of it. And you may realize it, you may not. But here's the thing: whether you realize it or not, whether you're writing it down or not, you're doing a lot of math. You're doing a lot of quick math. You're dealing with physics. You're dealing with geometry. You're dealing with resource management. There's math and all of that, and it's a beautiful thing. And back to the weapons, though. Some of those weapons are really fun because, like I said, you get things like submachine guns, you get things like assault rifles, you get grenades, plasma grenades, you get a plasma order rifle. There's different sniper rifles. There's a sci-fi sniper rifle, a vintage rifle. There's things along those lines. And there's the mag charger that I mentioned before. There's this thing called the injector where you do have limited ammo, but you can actually pick up the ammo again. Like they come in the form of darts, and with these darts, they insert something into your opponent where you they start to expand over time to the point where they explode. And so if you do use that weapon, it can be effective if you're able to get the shots out because it's not the slowest weapon in the world, but it's like, well, it's limited in capacity, so you want to get off a lot of shots so you can make your opponent explode, but then you have to also worry about them exploding if they're right near you. So you have a lot of factors to consider, and there's always math here. There's math in that. There's math everywhere. But yeah, so it's wild, and you can also have flamethrowers. It's short range, but they do a lot of damage. But you run through that ammo really quickly. I mentioned the minigun earlier. It has a decent amount of ammo, but it's a minigun. It's eating up that ammo, and it can overheat. And it takes a little time to get ready to fire. And while you can switch the mode so that it does it automatically, you're more likely to overheat. So you have to strategize here. With the sci-fi guns, I mentioned that you can be shooting them all over the place because it has one of those modes. And that's the cool thing about this game, right? Like some weapons have just one mode. Some weapons have like an alternate mode. And as you're playing, you want to have a good idea of where the buttons are. So like if you switch up, you'll go and you'll switch to the alternate mode. And switching to the sides on the directional pad. And the same up on the directional pad switches the alternate weapon. So switch to the alternate weapon and it goes back between that and the main form. Doing the same with down. Sorry. it's all in my head and it wasn't coming out right. So I'm going to fix that and go forward. The idea is like up or down on the directional pad allows you to switch between your main firing mode and your alternate firing mode, while left or right on the directional pad allows you to switch to the weapon. And so you have to consider those things and all of the other buttons and your position on a controller while you're going through, and you have to consider that with all the crazy things that are happening around you. TimeSplitters Future Perfect is a very fast-paced game. So you're doing a lot in a very short amount of time, and it's impressive. And then here's the thing, right? Not only is there math going on to a crazy degree during the match, but after the match as well. And here's the thing: is you're going through the math, and you're keeping an eye. Sorry, as you're going through the math, um, you can see over in the corner that you're at a certain rank. Like you might have gotten the most kills so far, so it could say that you're first. If you lose that rank or gain it again, or you're equal with someone, it'll show that too. And at the end of the map, it gives you a lot of stats to consider. You win if you get the most kills, right? But it also keeps track of everything. It keeps track of the amount of kills you had, the amount of deaths you had, the amount of suicides that you had, because it's a thing. You can blow yourself up accidentally. Things happen. And honestly, sometimes you could use that as a strategy, and be keeping those numbers in mind. But it also keeps track of the amount of shots that you had, and how accurate that made you as a result. It keeps track of those things and so much more, and it lays it out for you, so you can see those numbers, you can see what they mean, and it also gives you certain titles once you reach a certain threshold. And so that's pretty interesting. So just arcade mode with the deathmatch in mind has a lot of options and a lot of things considered. And then on top of that, you have team deathmatch, and it's taking that but just having two teams, right? And the cool thing about all these modes is a lot of them could be single player, but you could also play them as multiplayer, whether it be locally or multiplayer online. So it's all pretty cool. There's a lot of math involved in that. If you're playing, I didn't play it online back in the day, but if you're playing it locally, if you are facing off against an opponent or you're working with them, it will be a split screen, and the same goes for the story. So there's that to consider, and focusing on your screen and where you are at on the screen. And there's like math and all of that, and it's really cool to me. And then you have the actual story, where again, like I said, I'm not gonna really get into it too much, but I think it's fascinating because when you're constructing the story, there's a lot to consider. Like, right, you're thinking about how it's going to lay out. Right, so it's like, how long is this story going to be? What am I covering in the story? How is everything connecting? So there's a lot of math and all that. There's a lot of math and all the logistics involved. And this story had time travel, so there's math and all of that, and getting the details for each of the maps and like weapon locations and all that. And like you're adjusting, because it's not like arcade where you can choose this weapon and that weapon. Like you're going to be limited to a certain area. And here's the thing about like limited to a certain era. That era is indicated by the year that you're in. And that to me is cool because, right, we use numbers to say something about the world. Like we use that to try to organize ourselves. So in the real world, we use years to say, okay, well, this is when that happened, this is when that happens, and we use it to keep track of time. And in the game, it's no different in a sense, but it has this added layer that based on the gear and the era that you're in, it restricts the weapons that you have. And one of the interesting things, though, there are a few of the future levels in the game where they have this very experimental weapon, like the disruptor grenade, that unfortunately you can't get in multiplayer, but it's pretty awesome, so you get to experience that. But other than that, most of the weapons, all of the weapons outside of that are in the arcade mode and the other modes that it has, along with some additional weapons. But that being said, the story and how it's mapped out and how the insanity of time travel is a thing, it all comes together, and there's a lot of math and all that. And just in general, when you're constructing a game, not only is there math in the story, but there's math in how it's programmed. There's math and how you're intended to interact with the environment. There's math in the marketing. There's math in this complicated process of making a game, right? You got budgets to consider. You have how much you want to put into a game. And for me, as a player, and you as a player, we have to consider how much a game is. We have to consider how much we're getting out of it. It's like, so are we getting a lot of content? Is it quality content? Are we getting a lot of time out of it? All these things matter. And with Future Perfect, you get a lot of time out of that game. You get a lot of bang for your buck. You get a lot of content, a lot of quality content. Because like I said, it has so many modes. It has a story mode. You can play co-op with that mode. It has the arcade. That arcade has death matches. It has team death matches. It has capture the flag. It has other modes as well. There are challenge modes, league modes. You can play it online. There's a lot of math to make each of these modes and each of the things in those modes work. And that's amazing to me. And you're getting a lot from this game. And like I said, back then, when I got it for PS2. It was $50. I got it not long after it came out, but I did my homework and I knew TimeSplitters was a great series. And so I went and I bought it, and I got a lot out of that game. I've been replaying it recently. I'm still getting a lot of that out of that game. It's been 16 years since I got that game, and that's wild to me. And that's awesome to me because that's what, to me, y'all want out of gaming. You want an amazing experience that's going to have amazing quality. It has a lot of content. It's something that you know that you're going to get your money's worth from. It's ideal. So when possible, I think it's worth it to do research. And yes, take a risk. Hope it pays off. But when we're looking at if it's going to pay off, it's like these are the things that are worth considering, And for me, I do like replayability, and TimeSplitters definitely has that. It has that in the story, for sure, and of course, just like the other matches that you're doing and the other modes that you're doing in the story. I don't know why I said matches. I meant modes, but so when you're dealing with modes, yeah, it's worth considering because like right now, I can't really commit to a lot of large games like RPGs, for instance. Like I have some like I want to replay Final Fantasy VI. I want to play some other games as well, but they're long. So I do things like do fighting games and stuff like that from time to time. And every now and then I get into a mode where I'm going to be revisiting older games like I am now. And so like right before TimeSplitters Future Perfect, I was playing Soul Calibur 2 for a few weeks. It was a brilliant game, and that holds up. And now that I'm playing TimeSplitters Future Perfect again, it holds up. It's amazing. I'm having just as much fun now as I did back then, and that's impressive. And I feel like that's important for games because ideally you want them you want them to be fun to play. You want them to be innovative. For me, I prefer they be those things, but also have a good story, and I think that works for TimeSplitters as well. Although I will say, like, it's easy for the gameplay to overshadow the story just because the gameplay is so fun, but the story is really awesome too, and they just go all the way in with insanity. But that being said, TimeSplitters Future Perfect is an amazing game that's well ahead of its time, and I'm glad for that. And I've been having a blast. If you never played it, then I encourage you to try it out. And I don't know, I think I may have mentioned it early in this video. If I didn't, the idea is that like earlier this year in 2021, it was announced that they are doing a sequel to that. And honestly, they've been saying that for years, so don't know if that'll actually come to fruition. But I do think that whether it comes out or not, that TimeSplitters Future Perfect is, to me, one of my favorite games. It's one of the best games out there. And I think when people think TimeSplitters, they should be thinking about this. The other two, they're important. And I think this kind of brings everything together. Plus, you get the story that's actually like a story. And I think that's awesome. I hope people get to experience that. And that I think that the game is going to be amazing whether it gets a sequel or not. It's going to hold up. And I think that's impressive. And if I didn't also make my horrible joke, I think the title Future Perfect is kind of apt here. I don't think there's anything, such a thing as a perfect game, but this comes pretty close. And here we are in the future of where we were back then, and it still holds up. Could have been delivered better, But anyway, my whole thing is just that it's an amazing game. It was then, it is now, and I feel free to say that. I'll say that again in the future, which is just perfect. Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's horrible. But that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed TimeSplitters Future Perfect if you have played it, and if you haven't and you want to investigate it, I hope you do. And if you have anything to add to this conversation, please do. I would absolutely enjoy hearing it. Have a great day.